I want to talk to you a little bit about that court ruling where several First Nations, however not all, including the activist anti-oil chief Alan Adam, were able to have the referendum on secession sort of put on ice, claiming that they weren't properly consulted. The provincial government is going to appeal, which has resulted in Danielle Smith, an avowed federalist, being called a separatist for, I suppose, respecting the voting rights of Albertans.
Well, although our government does support Alberta remaining in Canada, we think that today's decision by the court will deny opportunity to well over 300,000 Albertans to have their petition verified by Elections Alberta. We think that this decision is incorrect in law and anti-democratic, and we will be appealing it as a result. Our cabinet and caucus will, of course, be meeting in the next couple of days to discuss the full context and make some decisions after we've had a chance to talk it through.
I'm going to ask you to speculate. How do you think this is all going to play out? Is Superior Court going to hear this and say, that's crazy? Citizens don't have the responsibility to consult with First Nations. That kicks in after the vote with the government. Like, where is this going? Will we see a referendum on October 19th?
Well, a couple of things. I mean, I think we'll see one, though I'm not sure if it's going to be maybe the one that initially was put forward by Stay Free. It's definitely put it in the lap of Premier Smith, and she's stuck with it. If we're going to go through the process of appeals, even if somehow a higher level judge, which I really doubt they would then rule in favor of more citizen engagement, because that's just not been their trend, that could take months, maybe a year or some. So if it's going to go through the appeals route, then there's no way there's going to be any referendum on the table this October. If the Premier schedules it, well, then there's nothing to stop it at that point, though. Then there's risks of court injunctions and so on if it's a constitutionally compliant one through the Clarity Act, because that endless question of it's not whether or not they're consulted with Indigenous people, it's whether there was enough or whether it was correct. And there's no definitions of what that is. So I think Federalists have found a way to shut down any effort on a constitutional referendum. Not to say again that it won't be held, but that the battles are going to be fierce going throughout this. So Smith is in a tough position because the independence groups, some of them, their heads, they're already calling for her head. They feel she must put this on the ballot, or they're going to come after her through party mechanisms and memberships. And she's in a rock and a hard place. So something's going to happen, I think, in this next week or so. Just exactly what it looks like, we're going to have to wait a few days to find out.
I hope she dumps it on Thomas Lukaszik's lap. Thomas Lukazik from Forever Canada, who successfully collected enough signatures and then submitted them to Elections Alberta for verification. He could have, I think he did trigger a referendum on secession, whether he likes it or not. And I think it would be wise of Premier Smith to just say, look, Thomas Lukazik triggered one. Let's rumble.
Yeah, it would be a way to go, a kind of an out. She'd say, well, look, this one passed the bar. There's no court injunction. Let's schedule it and get it on there. The other one isn't dead, but now we've got to wait for the courts to deal with all of that. In the meantime, everybody, if you want to campaign on this particular issue, thank Mr. Lukazik and get out there and work on getting your voice to one side or another on it. And it's been quite funny to watch Lukazik squirming on this and just outright denying that he wanted to trigger a referendum. He signed a document literally saying he wants to trigger a referendum. He did videos back then saying he wanted to have a referendum. I don't know how he feels he can just keep being contrary to his own actions. I guess just hoping everybody forgets, but we're not going to let him forget.
No, it's funny to watch people now attempt to rewrite their own history, Jason Kenney included. And that's why I'm so happy that you're working with me on a project through Act for Alberta. It's called Alberta Fact Check. You and I get up very early in the morning, and then we get working to see what misinformation has been peddled in the mainstream media, or by Federalists, or by activist chiefs, or by columnists. And we do our best to debunk these people, and not in a partisan way again, but just strictly please the facts. And I believe the facts, the arc of facts bend towards independence, and the arc of facts generally bend towards small government and personal responsibility. And so we do that every single day. You do a handful, I do a handful. Tell me why. I know why I wanted to get involved, but you tell me why you wanted to get involved.
Well, just as approached with it, probably similar reasons. I mean, we've seen the opposition playing, kind of as I mentioned with Lukasik, just so loose with the truth, and they're not being countered by legacy media whatsoever. I mean, Lukasik won't speak to the Western Standard where I'm working, and I doubt he's giving you guys any direct time, but he speaks to other interviewers, and none of them have at least called him out and said, well, wait a minute. You said this a little while ago, you're saying the opposite now. It doesn't mean they have to be in attack mode, but they should fact check these obvious mistruths. And as long as he's getting away with it, we know that opponents to independence are going to do more. And we've been doing this, barely a week yet, and there's been no shortage of outright misinformation to counter that's out there, and hopefully it provides a service when these opponents to independence are making their statements or thinking about making their statements. They got to remember, well, wait a minute, there's actually people dedicated to putting time in to checking on these things, and they will call BS on me if I put it out there. So maybe I'll reconsider what I was going to say. So I think it's performing a very important service. I sure hope so, because it's a god-awful hour to get up in the morning.
Yeah, it's 5. just so everybody at home knows, it's 5 that we get up and we start working on these things outside of all of our other things that we do. Myself at Rebel News, over at the Independent Press Gallery, at Act for Alberta, you over at Epoch Times and Western Standard, and then on your own YouTube channel. But I think this is important because the lies are going completely unchallenged. And as much as it should serve as a gut check to the liars, I hope to create a war chest, a bit of an encyclopedia for the independence movement, so that when they are at the door and they are, being countered by people in the most gentle of ways, that, Thomas Lukasik really didn't mean to do this. Yes, ma'am, he did. And I hope that we can arm people with the facts as they head out into the world, to make the arguments and have the conversations you detail in your book.
Exactly. There's a great reference right there for counterpoints to those commonly held misconceptions. And you don't even want to fault some of the people at the door. I mean, they're not all political wonks. A lot of them just watch legacy media. That's all they take in. And they haven't seen that. Getting in their face again doesn't help. But if you can gently point out, well, no, actually, this misconception you're holding came about because of this that was said here. But it has been determined that just wasn't the truth. And arming those advocates further with that sort of reference, it will provide a resource. Yeah, it's a building thing. We're not just hitting issues as they come. They're staying on there. The internet's forever, and it takes the bullets out of those Federalist guns.
One of the most shocking things that we found through our Act for Alberta polling is something that we've used multiple times in our Alberta Fact Check project, is that north of 46% of Indigenous people who responded to our poll of 3,000 people, which we hired Main Street to do. So we wanted a pollster that does work for all sides. It would give us the numbers straight. Main Street found that 46% of Indigenous people right now, without any convincing, would vote for independence tomorrow. And, the mainstream media peddles this as a monolith of Indigenous people who are fundamentally opposed to independence, but it's not true. It's just the chiefs who want to maintain the status quo because they benefit from the status quo, and apparently their own people and the votes of their own people be damned. I think the work that we're doing to give those people a voice as they're being roughshod, run over by their own leadership, I think is really important.
Oh, yeah. That was a fantastic and unexpected. I was kind of floored when I saw that come through, too. But I saw the amount of people you guys polled and what came in. I mean, this is a significant number. It's not an outlier there. And that might help encourage it. I mean, if anybody's being served poorly by the status quo, it's Indigenous members on the ground in the reserves. They're having a terrible time all we hear from are these chiefs and activists and lawyers and bureaucrats, but not the people living in there. But in a poll, we did hear from the people living in there. And maybe a few more if they're watching alternative sources of news, because that's the only way I could feel that they would start supporting this sort of thing. They're going to see that sort of polling number and realize, you know what, maybe my neighbors weren't all necessarily against this. Maybe we should have some conversations. And that sort of, to see a budding movement coming out from the Indigenous communities would be magnificent to see. And you can see some of the response, the hysteria from in the legislature from one of the MLAs in denial of your polling results shows that the Federalists realize what a weak spot they have there. And if you guys hadn't done that poll, I have to admit, I never would have estimated that there was such support hiding out there on those reserves. So I can understand why it's there.
Yeah, it shocked me. But if anybody should be upset with the federal government and their paternalistic ways, it should be the Indigenous people. And, shame on the chiefs for disenfranchising them, for not giving them the ability to vote. And as my friend Tamara Leach says, she has never been once consulted as a member of the Métis Nation. She's never been once even asked what her viewpoint is on this by the leadership of the Métis Nation. So I'm happy to say we might be the first people who did that.
Oh, and I hope that a lot of them appreciate that there was a different, somebody representing that segment of their voices. It's got to be frustrated. I mean, the chiefs have been acting as gatekeepers. It's difficult to find out what is happening within those reserves. You can't even go on to them without risking a trespass charge if you wanted to speak to people. Yeah. So with a dial and polling method to find out, wait a minute, there's different views there than what these gatekeepers of information and control, through the chiefs have been letting people know in general. And I hope a lot of people have been chewing on that and thinking about it. It helps change the perspective of both on the reserve and off, I think, for people on this whole issue.
Yeah, as Ezra pointed out, if an independence vote happened and only Indigenous people were allowed to vote, we just might win.
Yeah, that of all identifiable groups is actually the strongest level of support across the board. That was astounding. And again, though, once you got that reality check and you start to think about it, and you realize, no, it does make sense, actually. It makes perfect sense. Mm-hmm. If you're in that condition and you see a potential lifeline to really just finally shake and break that system up to make something better, you're going to reach out and look at something, which would be considered a radical change like independence. It makes perfect sense in hindsight.
Now, Cory, before I let you go, because I know you've got a real job and I've got many, many real jobs as well. Tell people how they can get a new copy of your book, even if you have the old copy. Get the new copy, get the relaunch because it's full of new stuff. It's available now. Tell people how they can get that. And then do tell people where they can find you because you're in many, many places doing a lot of work.
Yeah, I'm all over the place. But yes, sovereigntisthandbook.com. It's up there. That'll take you straight to the Amazon site. It's there in digital and hardcover and paperback. For those who already have a copy, it's a worthwhile update. I mean, the old copy isn't out of date. You can still give that to a friend and maybe buy a new one for their friend as well. As far as me, I'm on westernstandard.news. I have a YouTube channel. If you search Cory Morgan, I write a column for the Epoch Times. And of course on X, if you really want to have an exchange, it's Cory B. Morgan. And I tend to be pretty responsive there.
And albertafactcheck.com
with me. Of course. These are so many spots I'm popping up on. And yes, albertafactcheck.com. And watch that X account. It's been really good at putting those out there as soon as they break.
Yep. Yes. And maybe a suggestion to people who already have a copy of your book, put it in the little free libraries and then get a new one.
There we go. I like it.
Yes. All right, Cory, thank you so much. We'll have you back on very soon. And I know you're a frequent guest on the Rebel Roundup Buffalo panel. So we appreciate you for taking the time to do that as well.
Always a pleasure having a conversation on these kinds of issues, Sheila. This is the updated Sovereigntist Handbook. It's my new book, just published by Rebel News, and it's available right now at sovereigntistshandbook.com. I want to tell you what's inside it and who I wrote it for. This book is a field manual. It's not a rant, it's not a manifesto, it's not a history lecture, although there's some history in here because you can't understand where the West is going without understanding where we've already been. What you'll find inside is practical. I
Walk through why earlier Western independence movements rose up and then fell apart, and what has to be done differently this time if we're going to succeed. I give you answers to the common objections you are going to hear from your neighbors, your coworkers, and your relatives at the dinner table. There's a chapter on organizing at the grassroots level. There's a chapter on using social media effectively. And there's a section on preparing for a likely Alberta referendum, what it'll look like and what citizens need to know before it happens. And you can find this book at Sovereigntisthandbook.com. I wrote this for ordinary Western Canadians, people in Alberta, Saskatchewan, BC, and Manitoba who are done being frustrated and want to become more effective, more persuasive, more disciplined. If you want to become the kind of advocate that changes minds instead of just venting, this book is for you. It draws on decades of political experience and the hard lessons of past sovereigntist efforts, and it's written to be read by anyone, not just political junkies. If you felt for a while now that something has to change, but you've never been sure what one person can actually do about it, this book will tell you exactly what to do and how to do it right. So head on over to sovereigntisthandbook.com. Grab your copy today. Pick one up for a friend while you're there. The work starts now.